if you found this video, I'm holding on to the tripod because I'm talking to you right now. If you found this video because you or a loved one are going into treatment soon, please don't let this video scare you. All the worst things that happened to me during chemo were things that I manifested in my brain because I had bad anxiety. You do not have to deal with that alone. I don't know why I thought I did. I just didn't realize the tools I could have. Please find a therapist if you have to do cancer treatment, please, because if someone had taught me how to deal with those feelings, that would have been so much stronger than any kind of prescription for an anti-nausea drug could have been. Well, hello. Welcome back, everyone, to yet another video by yours truly. I'm not gonna wear my glasses. In my most recent videos, I have not enjoyed the glare on my glasses. And honestly, it makes me feel more confident because I look blurry when I'm looking at myself and I'm like, looking good. So, a few of you have actually asked for this video, and it only makes sense because I left y'all hanging with part 1. So, welcome to part 2 of my cancer story. And in this part, I'm gonna focus on the treatment, and that's probably it because the aftermath could be like 5 videos, to be quite honest. Before I start, I do want to say that I learned a lot by the things I didn't do in chemo. This will all make more sense in the end, but I want to preface with something because I noticed on my last video, I saw in the analytics that a lot of people were specifically searching for terms like how I found out I had lymphoma, do I have lymphoma, stuff like that. So I know this is obviously something people are looking for sometimes, and I was once one of you. I was once looking stuff up like that, and I think that looking up too much information actually made my treatment harder. So if you're watching this video and you're one of those people, especially if you're someone who already has lymphoma or was diagnosed and you're going to go into treatment at some point, I urge you to watch this video to the end because I struggled a lot in my chemo, and I don't want you to watch this and think that it has to be that way necessarily, because I actually before I went into treatment, I read about all the horrible things that could go wrong, and I absolutely had psychosomatic symptoms based off the stuff I was expecting. So I just want, if you're one of those people, watch it till the end because I have a lot of helpful tips and info to not fall into the same crap that I did. That being said, let's get into it. Davis just asked if I'm burning a candle. That's a kind of scary question. Are you burning a candle? Yes, I'm burning a candle.
It smells like good perfume.
In your room? I'm not burning a candle.
That's weird. It smells like so much like scent or perfume or something.
Is that me? I put product in my hair?
No.
That's creepy then. I don't know what to think of that.
I don't sneeze, and sometimes when I sneeze I get weird smells.
What the fuck? Every time. And every time I sneeze, I have a stroke.
Wait, is that a song?
Not really.
Oh. Okay. You just make it up.
Okay, I'm back. Nothing happened. So yeah, the last I talked about was my mom. I was making phone calls to the doctors. My mom ended up kind of taking over me, the caretaker. I'm probably gonna get a lot of dates wrong, just know that. I hope they don't come off as like discrepancies in the story. It was a long time ago, but I'll do my best. So I got diagnosed in September of 2013, and I saw my oncologist within that week. And before you can even start any kind of treatment, they need to do all kinds of tests to determine how well your body is functioning. So I took some kind of heart tests, I took breathing tests, I took all kinds of things. And I think that helps them determine like how intense the chemo can be, what kind of doses they do. And I was very healthy at the time. I think I was slightly overweight, but I was very fit at the time. So once they did all of that, then they had to do some tests to determine how far the cancer had spread, what stage it was at. And he had told me, my oncologist, that if it was stage 1 or 2, which in lymphoma mean it's like how far it has spread in your body. That's what the stages are. I know in other cancers it depends on maybe a little more criteria, but for lymphoma it's like how much it's contained in your body. So stage 1 and 2 is like, you know, just your throat is probably stage 1. Stage 2 would be like your throat and your lungs, and I think the spleen or something, or there's some organ that like splits it between 2 and 3. And so I first did a PET scan. Yeah, it was a PET scan, and a PET scan is just a full body scan, and the process is you can't eat carbs like 24 hours leading up to it or something, or 12 hours even, I don't know, something like that. But they inject you with some kind of like sugar isotope thing, which I'm gonna say words, I don't fucking know the meaning. I'm just giving you my experience, but I guess that sugar like goes through your bloodstream, and the cancer like wakes up and kind of eats it or something, and that's what shows up on the scan. So they inject you with a thing, you lay in a chair for like 45 minutes, and then they scan you. And the scan itself takes like 20 to 30 minutes, so it's kind of a long process, but that's how they determined what stage it was at. Mine was shown to be at stage 3. So my cancer initially showed up in my neck, and it was also in my throat, my lungs, and it was in my spleen also. So it just crossed that line into stage 3 territory. And which was so weird to think about, because I felt perfectly healthy, which is the scary thing, but I had tumors, I guess. And the next thing I had to do really sucked, and whenever I talk to people about this, the way they did it for me was apparently a little bit unorthodox, so don't get scared, because I know you can request different ways of this next thing happening, which I'll explain. So I had to get a bone marrow biopsy, and this whole story is really weird, because I was at my oncologist, and my mom would always come with me, except that day my mom had like a golf tournament or something, and it was important to her, and so she went to it. And so my dad actually took me to the appointment, and I could drive and stuff. I liked the moral support. I like reverted back into a baby when I went through all this stuff. I wanted to have my parents with me. So my dad went with me, and my dad hates needles. It's his number one big fear. And he used to be a sheriff, so it's just kind of funny that like the stuff he has seen, but needles are a no. The bone marrow biopsy involved a very large needle. So what they do is I laid on my side, and this was just in the oncologist's little doctor's office. I laid down on my side, pulled my shirt up. He had a huge needle, okay? It was big and it was thick. And he told me there would just be a little pressure, okay? And I believed him. And then he had this like kind of nurse assistant woman who was the sweetest woman ever. And she started getting kind of uneasy. And I was like, what's wrong? And she said, oh, I really don't like being here for this test. And I was just like, why? Why don't you like being here for this test? And she just kind of didn't say anything and just looked really uncomfortable. And I was just like, what the fuck? And my dad caught eye of the fucking needle that was gonna go into my back, and he peaced out. He was like, I'm sorry, Lizzie, I'm gonna be in the waiting room. And I was just like, Dad, what the fuck? But I also know a phobia is a phobia. I can't blame him. And so my dad is like pacing down the hall, calling my mom, and she's at a golf place, so it was like 15 minutes away from us at the time, in the middle of her fucking tournament. And by some will of God or some strange energy in the world, I'll never understand this. She doesn't understand it either. My mom was in the middle of this tournament, okay? And then just like what felt like a minute went by, and my oncologist was getting ready to start the test. It was literally about to start. The door was closed. And he must have been so pissed, because out of nowhere, my mom bursts open the door, comes into the room. He's about to put the needle in my back, okay? And my mom just comes in hot. And she just is suddenly by my side and like holding my hand, no words. Just like, I'll never understand how she got there that quickly, but that is just the way my mom is. She is just, will be by her children's side no matter what. She will even break the laws of the universe to do it, apparently. Oh my God, you guys, that pain. I had no local anesthetic, nothing. It was beyond anything I've ever felt in my life. It like radiated down to my legs. I keep stuff in really hardcore when I'm around strangers, but I was just like, I feel it in my leg. Oh my God. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? It was awful, terrible. And so that was by far like the most painful part of the whole shebang. And when I talk to people later, people apparently go under for that now. And I'm like, well, no shit they do, because that was really painful and people shouldn't be going through that. So if you have to get a bone marrow biopsy, I would at least suggest get a local anesthetic or like ask about what your options are, because it fucking hurt. Okay. Sorry, I spent like way too much time talking about that part. Why did Milo leave? He's not happy about the tripod and stuff. It really freaks him out. Okay. Okay, bone marrow biopsy. That was basically to test and see if the cancer had gotten into my bone marrow. Thank God it did not. So it came out negative. Before I started any kind of treatment, oh, I just realized I started a sentence earlier and never finished it. If you have stage 1 or stage 2 lymphoma, it's in such a small area that you can have radiation along with your chemo, because radiation is effective on a small area. But if it's stage 3 or 4, you don't get radiation, you just get full chemo. And that's just because it's too widespread. So I did not get any radiation. I only went through chemo, which the way my doctor put it, I remember he said, it's good news because you don't have to get radiation. It's bad news because now you have to have twice as much chemo. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what any of this is really gonna mean to me anyway, so whatever. You can still kind of see him, I just realized. By the way, if any of you ever wondered what that is, it's a dog crate. Our other dog, Ricky, has anxiety when we leave. He loves being in his crate. It's like the size of a German Shepherd crate, and he's a 15-pound dog, but whatever. There I go again. Tangents. Okay, so they determined it was gonna be full chemo for me. And before I even started any treatment though, my doctor, which I think this was a really cool and maybe even kind of progressive thing for him to focus on, he wanted to make sure that I, okay, so what the hell are you doing, Milo? So in chemotherapy for lymphoma, and maybe just the disease lymphoma itself, it can cause infertility sometimes. I think it's something between like 10 and 20% chance of causing infertility, so it's low, but it's still possible, obviously. So my doctor wanted to make sure I had the option to have babies no matter what happened. So what I did before I even started chemo was an egg harvesting. So literally I basically did all the steps of IVF, I think, but they just harvested the eggs and froze them. And that was a pretty weird and wacky thing to go through. I'm trying to remember all the details, but basically it kind of like goes along with your cycle somehow, and you have to inject some kind of hormone into yourself every night for a couple weeks. So every night I had to inject a big fucking needle of this shit into my stomach every night. It is hard to inject. It was like, the needle was at least like that long, okay? It was not, the first time I did it, I was literally just looking at my stomach, staring at the needle for like 45 minutes before I got the will to do it. I did that for I think 2 weeks. I think twice or 3 times a week I would have to go in to the fertility office at that time, and they would do a scan of everything going on, and the only way they can do that scan is by putting it up your hoo-ha. So long story short, sorry mom, I got to like get a giant put in me like 3 days a week, because that was super duper fun. I hope my dad doesn't watch these. Then once they saw a happy, healthy baker's dozen worth of eggs swimming around down there, well, I guess they're not the swimmers, they just chill. It was time for the surgery, the harvesting surgery. And so I literally went under, and they went in and they took all the eggs out. And they're still frozen. I think they're good for 10 years. So I still got like 3 years left, I think. And they're just waiting for me to decide to have a baby, I guess. And that's a whole other thing. I don't know when/if that's gonna happen. But anyway, that took almost a month, that whole process. So By that time, it was the end of October. It must have been like October, I don't know, 25th, 26th, I'm guessing. Because my very first chemo was the day before Halloween. So I'll just walk you guys through that real quick. So the way my chemo went, I know it's a little bit different everywhere. My chemo was called ABVD, and I used to remember what it stood for. I know it's adriamycin, bleomycin, adriamycin, bleomycin, vinblastine, and dacarbazine. Not that that helps anyone. That's the cocktail of drugs for lymphoma. And one thing that might be super duper obvious, but to me, before I had gone through chemo, was something I didn't realize, is that chemo itself is not a drug. Chemo is just an umbrella term for cancer treatments. So it can be all kinds of different drugs, and I think that is something that people don't know. And I say that because whenever I was having a hard time, or I saw other people online having a hard time, a lot of people would end up saying stuff like, well, my mother-in-law had this kind of cancer and she still worked out when she was on chemo. And it's like, okay, not all chemos are the same. Not all doses of chemos are the same. People, you know, it's different for everyone. So if you ever see someone struggling more during chemo, someone struggling less, they're probably different chemos. Even if they're not, everyone reacts to them so differently. They literally tell you that at the beginning. They give you a laundry list of stuff that can happen to you, and they say, this could happen to you, it could not. Everyone's different. Hooray. Enjoy finding out. So anyway, I went to my first chemo treatment, and I went with my boyfriend Davis, who was also my boyfriend at the time. Ooh, I have a picture that I can put here. Boink. I went with my mom and my sister and my dad, and I think my aunt also came, and this was an open air place. Like there were a lot of people there. And I was 20 at the time, which I guess is not a super common age to get cancer. I was also, you know, too old to go to the children's hospital. So I was the youngest person there for every chemo by at least a solid 20 to 30 years. Always by far the youngest. And so here I come strutting in. There's like, everyone's just kind of on their own. Some people have someone, and I come in with this giant entourage in like 3 or 4 different bags of shit that I think I'm gonna do. Like my laptop, a DVD player, bunch of books, bunch of art crafts, like way too much shit. If you're looking for tips on chemo, that would be one of them. Don't bring too much shit. You're gonna wanna just sleep anyway, honestly. It really wasn't so bad. I didn't have the greatest nurse for my first one. She wasn't super informative. I think she thought I knew more than I did, and would just start doing stuff, and I would just be like, wait, what's happening now? But before they even give you the chemo, they always would give you a cocktail of like Benadryl and steroids or something, and it would just kind of like knock you out a little bit, and I think the steroids helped with a lot of pain and inflammation or something. Oh, and they would give me Ativan. That was nice, but it made me feel really woozy. And the first treatment was not so bad at all. I just sat there, I was able to talk to everyone, everything was good. And I'm realizing now there's no way this video is gonna be short, so we're in it for the long haul, guys. It was fine. It was not like the most comfortable or fun thing to do, but it was fine. And I think for me it took about 4 hours, maybe a little longer because it was my first one. Basically you just sit there and it'll be 1 bag of drugs, and then that one's done, and the other one, and they just keep going until you're done. And I remember being a little bit like fuzzy and tired, but I think that was more because of like the Benadryl and the steroids and stuff and the Ativan. And then we went home and we got True Foods, which I don't know if you guys know, it's like this nice kind of slightly upper end health food place, and we got like pizza and salads and all this stuff, and I was just feeling good, eating a bunch of food, just hanging out. Davis stayed over for a little while. I woke up the next day, felt a little tired, still felt fine, and that was Halloween, so I like was with everyone for the Halloween festivities, and next day felt a little sick, but fine. And I was like, okay, you know, this is not so bad at all. Like, I could definitely do this. Do you want me to hold you? Oh my. There we go. So yeah, the chemo regimen for me, which I kind of glossed over, I guess, I had to do 12 separate treatments. And I always had trouble explaining or even understanding this, but it was 6 treatments total, but they were divided each into 2 separate chemo infusions. So it was 12 actual physical times going to the center. The projection at the beginning was I would have somewhere between 12 to 14 or even 16 treatments, depending on how well my body responded to the treatments. So then 2 weeks later, I had the next one, and it was not that hard either, but I think it was at that point I asked a nurse at the end about my hair. We were like, what are we gonna do about my hair? It's supposed to fall out, right? And she said, yeah, it's gonna start falling out. It normally, she said it doesn't usually start falling out until like the 3rd or 4th treatment. She said the best thing to do is get ahead of it and get a really short pixie haircut, or else you're gonna have really long hairs everywhere. And guys, my hair was so beautiful back then. Fuck. And then I had to get a pixie cut. I was not happy. It was mostly because of the circumstances, of course. So between my 2nd and 3rd treatment, I got a pixie cut, and I donated all of my hair to Pantene Beautiful Lengths, which my hairstylist said was the better one to donate to than Locks of Love. I don't know. And then it was, time for the 3rd treatment. And I think that one got a little hard. That was when it first started getting like, ugh. I started having this problem where I was getting a little bit queasy before the chemo even started. And apparently that's called anticipatory nausea. And it's just something totally manifested in your head. It was basically, I was so anxious, and my body was so anxious about getting this drug that or getting this treatment that makes you feel sick, that I would get a little queasy. And so chemo started getting a little uncomfortable at that point. I think it was my 3rd treatment that I had a blueberry smoothie that morning, and the nurses put when they find a vein, they first inject it with saline. And I had read all this stuff online about how some people can taste the saline and some people can taste the chemo drugs. And so every time I got injected, I would be like thinking about it and almost looking for the taste. And it was at that moment that I fully tasted the saline. And it's possible it could have been psychosomatic, but I really don't think it was. I think just somehow I started being able to taste it. It immediately made me need to fucking vomit. And so I was like, nope, I gotta go to the bathroom. They took their shit away. I ran to the bathroom and I threw up blueberry vomit everywhere. And a nurse came in with me and she was like, this is weird. Like, what? Did maybe something you ate this morning upset your stomach? And I was like, no, I tasted the saline. It made me feel sick. And she was really concerned. Her name was Vanessa, and she fucking rocked. It was not normal for someone to throw up like that at chemo. And I've been to 12 of them, and at all 12, I was the only one who ever got sick. So there was clearly something else going on. I think the rest of that treatment, I was fine. And then it was time for the 4th one. And by that, I was not in the best of shape. By that time, I was still a little overweight, but even then, even if I wasn't, I have very small veins. They even did an ultrasound and they're teeny tiny. At that point, they were trying to find a vein for like an hour, and I was getting pricked all over my arms. They were trying all these things, warming up a wet towel in a microwave to try and like press on my skin. They said I actually had smart veins, meaning they literally could see them, and they'd put the needle in and suddenly the vein would move away, which sounds insane. But I think that my body was really in flight mode. I was in full anxiety, like a total state of anxiety. And I think my body was doing everything it could to avoid the situation. So I'm not really surprised by that. Before we could even start the treatment, actually, let me fact check this, because I think I posted some like delirious photo on Instagram back when that happened on January 29th, 2014. So here's what happened. I was in chemo. It was my 4th or 5th treatment. I'm not 100% sure. After an hour of them trying to get a vein, the nurse said, honey, you gotta get a port. So what a port catheter is it's this little catheter that goes on your chest, and they can just put it like connects to veins like that go right to your heart. It creeps me out. I forgot that I saved it. Okay, hold on. Where do I keep it? Oh my God, it's somewhere. Okay, so it's a catheter thing that connects to your veins, and it eliminates the need for them to put needles into your skin because they can just inject the chemo right into it, and it's like it's a little highway to your heart. Here is the scar for mine. This is very overexposed, so it's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. So I got the port, January 29th, 2014. Here's an Instagram post. I said, welcoming the newest addition to my body, a port catheter. My veins are too weak sauce for any more chemo in them. Pardon my face, it's 100% drugs. That does look like drugs. This is like skipping ahead, but when I got the port taken out eventually, I asked them if I could keep it, and they thought it was kind of weird and cool that I wanted it. I still have it. This thing was in my body. That long white tube was like in my veins. I know this is weird, but it's like symbolic to me. Getting this out marked the end of the treatment, like for good, so it's important. So after I got the port is really when things start going downhill. My stomach's making a weird noise. I don't know if you guys could hear that. When you get your chemo infusion, there's kind of a general rule, especially for ABVD chemo. I'm not sure if this is the same for everyone, but basically day 1 is the infusion. Day 2, you feel pretty crappy. Day 3 is the worst day, always. You feel terrible. It's like when you have a really, really bad flu, I guess, is the best way I could equate it to. And then day 4, you start feeling a little better. Day 5, a little better. I would say day 6 is generally the day where you start actually maybe feeling like almost normal. Basically what happened is with every chemo, each day, it got worse every time. So that very first one I had was like easy. The second one, pretty easy. Third one, a little harder. And it just kept going in that direction the whole time. So by the time I got the port, stuff was pretty bad. And that anticipatory nausea got really, really bad, and it just continuously got more severe. So it got to the point where I'd be throwing up every morning before I'd go to chemo. I'd throw up as soon as they put the first drug in me. I'd throw up every time they changed the drug because I thought I could taste them all. And I literally think my body saw these drugs and was trying its hardest to like reject them because they made me feel so sick. And so I probably went through the whole gamut of anti-nausea drugs. And it got to the point where I started having to take those anti-nausea drugs for a good day or two before I even started the chemo. But here's the weird thing. It was a psychosomatic thing. It was anxiety. My brain manifested all of it. So even the strongest fucking anti-nausea that cancer patients can get, it didn't do anything for me. I can't remember which day it was, but there was one particularly hellish time. I think it was either my 5th or 6th treatment. Basically what happened is, oh no, it must have been, see, it's really blurry. I, had the nausea before, I was sick during the treatment, and then that nausea continued after the treatment as well. So I threw up all night. I threw up all the following morning, and I couldn't keep down any fluids, and I couldn't keep down any food. And within like 2 days, I lost like 12 pounds. And basically, when you're in chemo, you cannot ignore any symptom of any kind. If you have a cold, you call the oncologist. If you have a rash, you call the oncologist. Like anything. Stuff you'd totally normally ignore, suddenly everything's under a microscope. So my parents told them that I was constantly getting sick and throwing up, and they told me to come right back to the treatment center, which, because this was an anxiety issue for sure, made it all the more worse. So they took me into a room at the treatment center and gave me a bunch of fluids to, replenish my hydration. And I just got more and more sick. Oh my God, I completely forgot to mention the day, I'm so sorry, this is so scatterbrained. I probably should have created bullet points. Sorry. Back in the day, in 2013, 2014, there's this drug called Neulasta, and I feel very lucky that I had access to this drug because I had health insurance, and people who don't have to pay, let me see, it's something insane. One injection will cost you $5,000 to $7,000. Welcome to America. I got it covered for the most part, I think. And basically what it does is chemo depletes your white blood cells. Because what the chemo does is it's essentially killing cells at all different stages. That's why your hair falls out. That's why your mouth gets all these weird sores. That's why it kills cancer. It's just killing cells all fast growing cells, because that's really what cancer is. The Neulasta, what it would do is it would replenish some of those white blood cells so that you could still go live a normal life and not get sick really easily. And it's ironic that people who don't have health insurance can't afford it, because those are probably the people who need to be in the workforce the most. So it's just a really fucked up thing. The good news though is I'm pretty sure there's all kinds of other alternatives now. I think there's like a patch you can take, but I had to go into the doctor again on day 2 of chemo every time to go get that shot, and I hated going in the second day. It sucked. So anyway, back to what I was saying. There was that time I got really sick. I got fluids. It made me even more sick. It was truly hell. And it continually got worse. Chemo got harder and harder and harder for me. And the only way I got through it, and I really am super duper privileged. I'm so lucky for the life that I have. I had parents who both were able to caretake for me. My mom wasn't working. She was my full-time caretaker at the time. I, had my own room in a nice house. I had a nice comfy bed. Any food that I was craving, my dad would go get in an instant. A lot of matzo ball soup. I don't know how people do it without support. It was incredibly hard. And so I feel very grateful and lucky that I was in a position to have people taking care of me, and taking care of me really well. My parents fucking rocked it. Another really cool thing that we have in our family is I have a family of farmers. This is such an appropriate thing I'm wearing. We've had an avocado orchard in our family for like decades and decades, and there's a house on it. And it's really secluded. It's up high in the orchard. It's like on the hillside. And it's just this really nice secluded house surrounded by nature. And for us, it's like a little miniature free vacation. And it became my favorite place in the world. The only way I feel like I got through those chemo treatments every time was I needed stuff to look forward to. Planning is my mode. It's the way I live life, looking forward to stuff and planning. In my like horrible days, I would just be sitting there writing menus for like what I wanted to cook when we'd all go up to the ranch. I'd think about our activities at the ranch, and it would only be for a weekend, but it was all I needed. I needed a bright thing to look forward to. It's funny because that ranch really became a place of solace for me. And it's funny because my treatments were always on a Monday, and we would always go to the ranch the weekend before. So every Sunday morning, I would just sit with my iced coffee and I'd look out onto the view. There's a little covered patio. I'd look out onto the view and I would just think like how lucky I was in that moment and how much I was dreading chemo the next day. Once again, I apologize for messing the dates up, but actually before I got the Porto catheter, I was declared cancer-free on January 24th, which was really cool. You still have to finish the chemo, but that meant the chemo was really working because I got a PET scan, no more cancer, done. So it was only a couple treatments and my cancer was gone. Pretty fucking amazing. So because I was officially cancer-free, that meant I only needed to do the 12 treatments and not the full 16, which I don't think I could have done the full 16, to be quite honest. So that was amazing. So I'm literally looking at my Instagram page. Oh, by the way, you guys can come follow me if you want. It's at Lizzie Noom. You can message me too if you want and tell me you're a viewer, but if you follow me and you scroll down far enough to like 2013, 2014, you can see a lot of my cancer pictures if you're curious. This is just gonna be a long ass video. There's just so much to talk about. I ended up getting so sick during every chemo. So like I said, I went through the full gamut of anti-nausea drugs. And to the point that, and I found this hilarious, the very last one that was prescribed to me was called Marinol, otherwise known as dronabinol, otherwise known as synthetic THC. So they basically gave me fake man-made weed, and at that point I was just like, why am I not just smoking weed, right? Of course I didn't want to smoke it because lungs had cancer in them, or not anymore at that point, but still sensitive. And I was not new to weed. I had had it in my youth, not a ton. My dad got me this little vaporizer, which I'm very grateful my parents are cool with all that shit. It would suck to have parents in that moment who were like, no weed in the house. They were just like, we're gonna do what we can to help you, girl. So my dad got me this little vaporizer for weed called a Pax. I started using it on like my 8th or 9th treatment, and I wish I had used it the whole time. I'm not a doctor. I can't fully advocate because, you know, I don't know it's something you would need to talk to your doctor about, but my God, it made me feel so much better, like unbelievable. And I actually have, I don't know if anyone noticed this right here. This is really interesting. I like to draw. I've always been an artist. But so I just always had tons of sketchbooks scattered around in my room. I still do now. And my mom needed to keep track of when I was taking what medicine. And so what happened, the way it would go is the day after chemo, I would have to start taking my at-home medications to help with nausea, to help me sleep, all that stuff. My mom would keep track. She would use these random sketchbooks that were laying around. It's probably really hard to see because it's kind of bright, but basically it's like 7:20 a.m. Zofran, Prilosec, Claritin, extra strength Tylenol, 9:20 promethazine, 11:20 Zofran, 1:20 promethazine, 3:30 Zofran, 6:30 promethazine, 7:30 Zofran. So this says Thursday, day 3, which is always the hardest day. She wrote some notes, so nauseous, so uncomfortable, about to barf. Fun times. But then as you can see, I started adding another thing into my routine. Weed. But it's really crazy to see this stuff. My mom was rad that she, took this time to write all these things down. And if I look in any of my old sketchbooks, I'll find stuff like this. Anyway, let's just say chemo got really hard, and it was mostly because of anxiety. And my oncologist did tell me a lot. He said, I think you should start going to therapy. And I 100% rejected the idea, didn't even consider it for a moment. I was 20. It wasn't something I thought I needed. Very proud of 20-year-olds and those who are younger who, understand the importance of mental health, but I didn't grow up with the idea that therapy was essential, that it even was helpful. Not that anyone taught me those ideas, it just wasn't a part of my life, so I thought, why is it necessary? I really should have gone to therapy. I really should have, because I think having coping mechanisms for my anxiety would have turned the whole thing around. It was definitely harder for me because I kind of became a hypochondriac in that time, and I looked up everything that could go wrong, and I'm pretty sure I manifested all that stuff myself. Eventually, I got so sick during chemos that I had to get transferred to a different treatment center at a bigger hospital where I could have a private room, because quite frankly, no one else in chemo wants to be near someone barfing. And I just needed that privacy because I would get so sick. And so for the last leg of my treatment, the last 3 or 4 of them, I was in the new hospital, and I had the best nurses. I had the best. They were fucking amazing. It got so hard around that time that I would literally call my oncologist and I would beg. I would say, give me my odds if I don't do the last 2 or 3 treatments, because I can't fucking do it. And he would just say, Lizzie, or he'd call me Elizabeth. He'd say, Elizabeth, I cannot endorse that you don't do them. You have to do them. He's just like, your chances of recurrence go up. That's all. So you really need to complete them. I was looking for an out in every way possible, and I kept getting it stuck in my head. Like, I can't finish it. I just can't. I cannot do it. He did start giving me more time between each chemo, more time for my body to recover, which was nice. So I'd get an extra week, I think, at that point. And there was one, I think it was my second to last chemo, my fight or flight response was on so intensely that I was sitting in the waiting room with my mom before the treatment, and I was just like, Mom, I think I'm about to run out of here. I was like, Mom, I can't do it. I'm about to run. And she was just sitting there going, please, God, please call her. Have a doctor come out and call Lizzie into the room right now, because she's going to fucking make a run for it. And I was telling my mom this as if it wasn't even a choice I was making. I was like, Mom, I'm going to have to run. Then the doctor came out and said, Elizabeth, come into the room. And so I did. I did not run away. We got to finally my last treatment was April something? April 23rd was my last treatment. April 23rd, 2014. That is almost 6 years ago. That's crazy. Wow. Sorry, that's nuts. That's why it's hard for me to remember all this stuff, because it was a long ass time ago. So yeah, April 23rd was my last treatment. It was insanely hard. I was not looking forward to it. And I just kept thinking to myself, this is almost done. Every day it's going to be easier. At that point, I had to stop taking the Neulasta because I started developing an allergic reaction to it. I don't know, it was weird. So my last 2 treatments, I couldn't take it, and my white blood cell counts were low. I was sick. I was almost fucking bald. I recognize myself, really. I have no eyebrows, no hair. That's my mom, who's to the left of me, and the rest of the women are my nurses. Were my nurses. That was my last day of chemo. And even though I don't want to get too into post-chemo, I do just want to say one thing. I spent my entire treatment looking ahead to the future. I kept thinking, I'm going to do so much when this is over. I'm going to accomplish everything. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get an amazing job. I'm going to do it all. And I'm going to be so happy, and I'm going to take advantage of everything. And I say this now because I actually think it's weirdly appropriate, because I feel like a lot of us right now in the middle of this pandemic are saying things like, I can't wait for this to be over. I'm going to do everything, yada, 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 which is great. It's wonderful to realize how grateful we were for our lives before this. And I have no doubt that many of us are going to take full advantage of our lives again once we can. But I do think there's a weird parallel here, and that's when I was done with chemo, I was not happy. I was not excited. I felt like I had just finished fighting a fucking war, and I was depressed. I was so depressed because I had just gone through something extremely traumatic, and you just deal with all of the emotional outcome of that. So you expect that you're going to be really happy, you're going to take advantage of everything, and that you're going to like emerge on the other side as this extremely happy person, and it's just not always like that. And for me, it wasn't. And I turned 21. It was my 21st birthday, like 2 weeks after my last chemo. That morning, I was just like, I texted my friends, and I was just like, guys, I don't want to do anything. The last thing I want to do is party. And they were like, oh, come on, Lizzie, we had gotta go to dinner. I mean, come on. And I was just like, I didn't want to do it. But we ended up going, which was good, but I was in like a deep ass fucking depression. And I didn't understand, I had no coping mechanisms for that. I just kept thinking, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why am I not grateful? Why am I not living life again? So I would just sit there depressed, and then feeling guilty about feeling depressed, and then it would just be this terrible cycle of me feeling shitty. I know this is all very grim. I want to say that I'm pretty happy now. I obviously got through all that. Therapy years later worked wonders. But I say this because I didn't know how to handle those emotions. I didn't understand self-forgiveness. And I just want to say, if you found this video, I'm holding on to the tripod because I'm talking to you right now. If you found this video because you or a loved one are going into treatment soon, please don't let this video scare you. All the worst things that happened to me during chemo were things that I manifested in my brain because I had bad anxiety. You do not have to deal with that alone. I don't know why I thought I did. I just didn't realize the tools I could have. Please find a therapist if you have to do cancer treatment, please, because if someone had taught me how to deal with those feelings, that would have been so much stronger than any kind of prescription for an anti-nausea drug could have been. So I really think that while my experience was hard, undeniably, that would be my resounding statement for sure, is get help, because I didn't do that, and that can make like a world of difference. Yeah, chemo sucked. It's not gonna ever be fun, but I think it can be manageable. And oh, hi Ricky. Ricky, come say hi to the people. Oh, it's my baby boy number 2. Ricky, say hi. Oh, this is my floppy man. Oh, yeah. Oh, can I just hold you for a little? I'll deal more with the post-chemo stuff later, but thanks for watching. I'm sorry if this video seemed grim. I guess I should have focused more on the fact that I beat cancer, bitch. I did it. I focused on the shitty stuff a lot, But I got through it. I conquered cancer. My parents fucking rocked it. Yeah, that was my cancer story, guys. It was almost 6 years ago that I finished my treatment. In another video later, I will break down some tips for people going into chemo. I wanted this to maybe be more just about my story as opposed to just like general tips for everyone, because this video is already long. I can't go on forever. I mean, I can, but you're not gonna watch it, let's be real. It was hard for me to sit down and do this video. Not because it's like an emotional subject matter for me necessarily, but because it's a big subject matter and it's hard for me to get everything straight in a linear fashion of storytelling. So I do apologize that this was a little bit here and there. And like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm realizing right now how damn like asymmetrical my face is. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.